and how they are portrayed by Israeli poets. And I would like first to start saying that I don't come from a religious point of view to talk to you. And that's why I'm not going to use the commentaries and the religious aspect at all, almost at all. But I'm going to read the passages in the Bible as a story and how the Israeli poets related to them. Now, Gadi is going to start working. The Bible is the infrastructure, really, of Israeli society and Israeli life. It's moral and spiritual infrastructure. And it's so important in Israeli life that it's part of our scroll of independence. And I'm going to... This is our Declaration of Independence. We're going to see it in a minute in English. Okay? So it reads as follows. The document really starts by drawing a direct line between biblical times and Israel of nowadays. And it says, Israel was the birthplace of the Jewish people. Here their spiritual, religious, and political identity was shaped. Here they first attained to statehood, created cultural values of national and universal significance, and gave to the world the eternal book of books. We are going to listen to Ben-Gurion, our first prime minister, saying that.
בארץ ישראל כאן העם היהודי, בה הוצגה דמותו הרוחנית, הדתית והמדינית, בה חי חיי קוממיות ממלכתית, בה יצר נכסי תרבות לאומיים וכלל אנושיים, והוריש לעולם כולו את ספר הספרים הנצחי. לאחר
That's enough. Now, why is it so important in our lives? Because it ties Israel, the Bible ties Israel, or the Jews, with the land of Israel. It's so important because it gives us the right to the land, and it gives us the language which has been dormant for many, many years during the diaspora time. And the Zionist movement had this vision of conquering the land, conquering work, and conquering the language. And the Bible really supplied the Zionist movement with the three of them, because our ancestors worked, they cultivated the land, or they had their flock, and they spoke the Hebrew language, which became alive again as of the first aliyot, the first movements to Israel. Now, the biblical story is well known to many parts of the Israeli society. And its language is unique, poetic, rhythmic, and concise. And as such, it gives a lot of room for the imagination. And each poet would take it to another place as he or she would interpret it. They are very dramatic. They are extremely condensed and full of gaps. Like, why did she say nothing? Like when Abraham takes Isaac to the binding, why doesn't she say anything? Why doesn't the Bible tell us what she feels and what she thinks? And the poet goes into that gap and starts saying what he or she would think. The stories are very archetypal, and they contain almost every aspect of human life and human interactions and feelings. We are going to meet jealousy, we are going to meet a lot of sexuality, we are going to meet violence, we are going to meet hatred, we are going to meet empathy and compassion, we are going to meet a dysfunctional family and contempt of the wife towards her husband, and much more. So every story could be taken then afterwards and be exploited or be the infrastructure to a much huger story in life. So let's go now. The first story we are going to have is the story of the Garden of Eden and the first woman. And the Bible tells us that God really plants a Garden of Eden, and he puts man there, and he gives him a wife, or he takes his rib, and out of the rib, the wife comes, and the wife is going to seduce him, according to the Bible, because she is seduced by the serpent, by the snake. Now, one of our poets, Carmi, is going to take this story and tell us another story. And this is the first poem that we have, Eve knew. Okay, what did Eve know? Could someone read it, please? You have it also in your... Please.
Eve knew what was hidden in the apple. She wasn't born yesterday. From between Adam's ribs, she observed the order of creation, listening to the grasses and crawling things. Eve knew what was hidden in the apple. The waters raged, the moon grew black, the letters brandished their thorns. The beasts of the fields devoured their names, and the voice said, "It is good." Eve knew what was hidden in the apple. "It is good, it is good." And again, "It is good." A torrent of goodness. A model garden, watered, sated, an exemplary mother. Happy are all living things. Eve knew what was hidden in the apple. In the light of day and with a clear mind, her naked body darkening the sun, she released the big worm to gnaw at the roots of the trees. Happy ending. Adam, his sweat flowing like a river, confessed by the light of the sword that he was out of names, that the good had exhausted his strength, and that is good.
Okay. First of all, I don't know if you noticed, but in the Bible there is no apple. There is fruit, no apple, and probably it was a fig tree because they had the fig girdles, so it couldn't be an apple. An apple wasn't part of the 4-9 flora, and God was not of the Middle East. So, but Carmi sticks to the apple, maybe because he was born in Brooklyn. So I really don't know. So she knew what was inside the apple. Carmi is a very interesting guy. He was born in Brooklyn, but his father spoke with him only in Hebrew, and he sent him at a very early age to Israel to study in Israel. And then he went to the Hadasa, what was before the statehood, the military force, and he started at the Hebrew U, and he became a translator for many, many languages. And he used to write very nice poetry, as we can see. Now he's using the word know here in the biblical sense of sex. And Adam knew his wife, and she conceived and had a son. So before Adam knows what sex is, Eve knows what sex is. So Gadi, could you go back? Eve knew what was hidden in the apple. There is no snake. She is not tempted. She is not seduced. She is going to do it herself. She doesn't need any phallic symbols, nothing. She is going to release the big worm, which is sexuality. And she has that power. He puts her at the same level as the divine spirit. She knows what sex is, and she knows that it's good, and Adam is going to learn from her that it's good. So this is a very interesting approach to what the story really tells us. And it's intuitive, and according to Carmi, women know it. Men have to learn it. Well, I thought it was the opposite way around, but never mind. Yeah. So, and Adam knows that that is good. So, It's a happy ending after all the work that Adam had to do, calling the names of all the animals, his sweat flowing like a river. You remember that there are rivers in the Garden of Eden, so his sweat is really creating the rivers. He confessed by the light of the sword. You remember the sword that they can't come back to the Garden of Eden? He takes all the symbols from the biblical story, the sword, the river, the apple, the fruit, the apple, etc., etc., and he puts them together in a new way. Confessed by the light of the sword that he was out of names. That's why you remember, God had to stop creating, but here Adam stops creating because he ran out of names. That the good has exhausted his strength. It's too good. And now all he is left with is sex, and that it is good. Yeah.
Something strikes me about the lesson, and that it is good, because when God created each day, he said that is good, and Tuesday, Yom HaShlishi, it was even twice as good.
Right.
So I think there might be some connection.
Exactly, because sex was twice as good. Yeah, this is a very light type of poem, and it makes us smile and laugh. The next one is going to be very sad and very difficult to handle for me anyways. And that's why I put it on black. Written in pencil in the sealed railway car. Dan Pavis was a Holocaust survivor. He was a professor of Hebrew literature, whom I knew quite well. And much of his poetry had to do with the Holocaust. That's the only sad poem that I have. The rest are more one could handle better. And he took the story of Eve, in Hebrew, Chava and Kol Chai, the mother of all living things, and put her in a carload, in the trains that shipped people to the concentration camps. And she is there with Abel, her son. Both are victims. And who is the victimizer? It's the other son. It's Cain. Cain is the victimizer. Here in this carload, I'm Eve, with Abel, my son. If you see my other son, Cain, son of man, tell him here in the carload, I'm Eve. That's how it goes all the time. That's why it's open. Tell him here in the carload, I'm Eve, with my Abel son. You know, all the time it goes again and again and again and again and again. And it's written in pencil because it can be erased very easily. If you are not careful, it's not going to be there. Now, Cain is son of man. In Hebrew, Ben Adam, the son of Adam, which means in Hebrew, a human being. Is Cain a human being? So this short poem, all his poems are very, very short and very strong and very difficult to handle. So she is with her son, the one that was murdered by Cain, and Cain is murdering both the mother of all living things and the other son. And you have to write it in order to remember it. Be careful that it's not going to be erased.
Is Cain the Nazis?
Yeah, Cain are the Nazis. Yeah. Yeah. And this poem was published by Yad Vashem, that is the Museum of Memorial for the Holocaust in Israel. And I took it from there. Yeah.
I never put together the last sentence with the first one. I never thought that the first sentence is a continuation of the last sentence. What I thought was, we don't get to, we have to fill in what she wants to tell her son, who is the murderer. That's her son too. Her good son who's murdered, and the son who's the agent of the
No.
He's also her son. So when you see him, you tell him
Gone. She's gone.
and that's where we focus on the content of the poem. That was my interpretation. Do you think he intended to loop around to the beginning?
That's what I know, but you might be right. You see, a poem is open to all kinds of explanations and interpretations.
Well, suppose hypothetically, and then I'll stop. If you see my other son, Cain, son of man, tell him I forgive him, I damn him, that's the challenge. What would the mother say? Because she's the son of all, mother of all life, and one of her sons,
Is going to destroy all life.
that is
All
right.
life,
That is
because
it.
she is the mother of all life, and once he destroys her, he has destroyed all
Whatever
life.
is in his
Yeah.
power, he will
Right.
destroy.
Right. Thank you very much. Okay, we are going to stop with that poem. I hope you forgive me for putting that in. Okay. Now we are going to quite a story. Lot is the nephew of our friend Abraham. There is this guy who lives in Iraq, Kasdim, which is Iraq now. This guy is the first one, according to the Bible, who believes in one God. And he goes from Iraq with his family. He has a very beautiful wife, Sarah, that he's going to give, by the way, to Pharaoh, so Pharaoh won't kill him, but that's another story. And in return, she is going to get a maid, that's Hagar. We are going to put her aside, but he's going forward to Israel, to the land of Israel, to the land of Canaan, with his nephew, that is Lot. Now, they have a fight, Lot and Abraham, because both have a lot of flock, and the country, the land is arid, and it can't support all the flock, so they decide, Abraham says, let's split, you go here, I go there, and we won't have a war between us. And Lot decides to go to Sodom, because in the past, according to the Bible, it was very fertile. Now, the people of Sodom are really very bad, and they are very cruel, and and God decides to kill everybody in Sodom, and to have an earthquake there, or whatever it is, and Sodom is going to be destroyed completely and erased from the face of the earth. Now God sends two angels, to tell Lot what is going to happen. So Lot and his wife and children, two daughters, can run away from Sodom before the disaster is going to happen. Now when the angels come to Sodom and they talk to Lot, the people of Sodom, who are cruel and violent and animals, really animals, knock at the door and say, we hear that you have newcomers here, you have guests. Let them come out, and we are going to know them in the biblical sense. And he says, no, I won't. And the angels tell him, you have to run away before God is going to destroy Sodom, and tell everybody not to look backwards. That's very archetypal. We have it with Eurydice, whatever you call her, in the Greek mythology. We have that idea of not looking back, and psychologists have made a lot of money on that. Don't look at the past, look only at the future, or look at what is now. But God knew it before, and the wife of Lot knew it, but she was too curious, according to the poem we are going to read, and she didn't. So the angels tell him, don't look back. If you look back, something bad is going to happen to you. And we have the wife of Lot, who did not listen to what the command was, and she looked backwards. And we're going to read now a poem by Asher Reich. And we know from the Bible that traveling behind her husband, Lot's wife looked back, thereupon turning into a pillar of salt. Now let's hear what she has to say after she became a pillar of salt. Asher Reich puts words into her mouth. Now that she's a pillar of salt, what could she say? Who would like to read, please? Willie, I can see that you are willing.
Here I am, firebrand, moving about as a grain of earth. Behind me I left a city dripping dawn to its fate. What happened there, I could guess. A fire, as I stepped, I heard the roaring of the sun, the smoke of the land I felt at my neck. It was not longing to turn my eyes that seized me with a curiosity that always overcomes fear. It was born in me the look backward. So I don't know if that went right. When looking back, one doesn't see a thing, and now I see you, Lot, wandering like a wineskin and all that's overturned, in the valley of lime that blossomed in your drunk head. The salt of my bones making you thirsty forever. Forever you'll remember the dead past among barbarians. Among barbarians we build our house, and fates in pairs, you and I, our two daughters, and the two angels forsaken. So foreign even to myself. My belly swelled twice from your seed. Afterward I swelled from the salt of the earth. And then I knew my life became an ephemeral flame.
Thank you. You wanted to say something? No? Oh, I thought you wanted. Yeah, please.
I'm having trouble with flame and salt, the connection. To me, they don't seem connected.
Right. But God sent fire to Sodom.
Okay,
So that's why.
So she's, yeah.
What is a pillar of salt? Is a pillar a unit of measure?
No, pillar is
It's
like
a statue. Something that would hold up a building.
Yeah.
Yeah.
a column. A column of.
A pillar as in a pillar.
Right. As a,
But why does she say I'm moving around like a grain of earth?
that's what the poet thinks. The poet thinks she has a grain of salt in her. And the salt is not outside her, but it starts within her. And she really gave Lot the salt, if you read it. Could you go back? No, here. The salt of my bones making you thirsty forever. She is a grain of salt. And now God pours salt, and together she becomes a pillar of salt. And it has here an allusion, or it alludes to the story that when Sodom was destroyed and there were no men around, the two daughters of Lot made him drunk and slept with him in order to have a seed. And they both conceived, and one had Moab and the other had Ammon. And that's how the two nations were born. So now if you think that movies are X-rated, I think that the Bible is more X-rated than the movies, because sleeping with the father, making him drunk. Now, what is very important, which I forgot to tell you, is the biological decree that women have in the Bible. They must have children. And this is something that goes all the way through the Bible. And this is their biological decree and destiny. They must accomplish it or else. And that's why when Sarah is barren and Rachel is barren, they suffer so much. Because this is against the biological destiny. So here our friend Mrs. Lot, well, she didn't look back because she was afraid or something like that, but she was curious. She was curious. That's another archetypal element that women have, curiosity. They want to know. And Eve knew before Adam. The poets, and these are two male poets, that think that women are very curious and they want to know and they know. We see later what women poets think. It's a different approach. But the male thinks that she's curious and that's why she's looking back. And also, she says he'll be damned forever because wherever he's going to go, he'll remember the dead past. He'll never. She looked back and she's stuck there, but he also will be stuck in the past. Lot. And also, she says to him, you wanted to go there? I could tell you, Amarti lecha, I told you that these are barbarians. We shouldn't go there. But you wanted to because you thought it was fertile, because you thought you could make money there, because it's high tech for you. So that's why we went there. And now the fate impairs. You and I are two daughters and two angels, forsaken, so foreign even to myself. Now I feel even foreign to myself. Everything is alienated. We learn about the dysfunctional family, the love between Lot and his wife. Yeah. My belly swelled twice from your seed, but afterwards I swelled from the salt of the earth. What I have now inside me is only salt, nothing else. And instead of the two girls that I have the salt. I'm salty inside and salty outside. We are going now to listen to an Israeli song about the wife of Lot. I translated it very freely into English, extremely freely, because it's too much work.
You know, when you talk about translation, is there, so this was written in Hebrew, is there more than one translation?
Sure. But I took the one that is more, how would I say that, is more accepted. I took the ones that David Jacobson from Brown University did. This is considered a good one. Yeah.
When you said they knocked on the door and who should come out? Was it the daughters that should come out?
No, the angels. The angels. They were homosexual as well as heterosexual. They would have intercourse with anything in those days.
Who knocked on the door?
The people from Sodom.
Okay.
Okay? Gadi. Oy ואבוי לי. You'll hear Eshet Lot, Lot's wife. Okay, so not only the poets are very affected by the biblical story, but also our singers are as I said in the beginning, it's part of the Israeli infrastructure, the biblical story. And many songs, popular songs, were written after the biblical story. And again, they interpret it in a way that is different from the biblical passage. And as I say, the biblical passage is so concise, so condensed, so dramatic, that it leaves room for the imagination and for various different interpretations. So now we go to the story of Sarah and Hagar. As I told you, Abraham lives in Palestine, Iraq, and goes with his wife Sarai, who the Bible tells us is very beautiful. And she's so beautiful that two kings want her. One is Abimelech and the other is Pharaoh. And Abraham, our forefathers, our ancestor, who is very honest, I'm sorry to say that, I'm saying in quotation marks. He tells her, tell them that you are my sister, so they won't kill me. And otherwise they'll kill me and take you. And what do? I mean, we are here on a mission to tell the world about the one God. So the first one is Pharaoh, and he takes Sarai, and God punishes him because she's a wife of another man. So he says to Abraham, what did you do to me? It's not your sister, it's your wife. And he gives him a lot of presents, and one of the presents is the maid, the Egyptian maid. Now Sarah is barren. And you remember one of the biblical issues or main issues is that you must have a child. And we have now the story of the first surrogate. Hagar, the Egyptian maid, is going to be a surrogate. She is going to have a child with Abraham, and the child will be raised by Sarah. The problem is, what the Bible tells us, that life is something that happens, like Jay Leno said, when you have other plans. So this is her plan, but the plan is going to go wrong, because Hagar becomes more than just a surrogate woman. She becomes probably someone that Abraham also loves. And she has this child, Ishmael, and Sarah is very frightened, very scared, and she demands of Abraham to expel Hagar and her son to the desert. That's another story that makes children sleep well at night when they hear that, that the father drives them away, to the desert, etc., etc. But I'm going to skip that part and go to the part where the angels, we have the angels, now we have three. In Lot's story, there were only two, now they multiplied, we have three. And the three of them come to Abraham and they tell him that in a year time, and he's 100 years old and Sarah is 90, his wife is going to have a son. And she laughs. And in Hebrew, to laugh is tzachaka. And that's why Yitzchak, Isaac is called what he is called, because she laughed. Tzachak, Yitzchak. That's where his name comes from. But when I looked at the story, I thought, oh, poor Sarah. Just imagine, you get a surrogate, and what happens is that your husband falls in love with her. So I wrote this poem about jealousy. Sarah was a woman, soft and pliant, like a furrowed field, and he was Hagar. Sarah was soft and pliant, quiet and kind, a woman, and he was Hagar. Sarah was a woman, quiet and kind, crushed and cruel, and he was Hagar. Sarah was crushed and cruel, a woman. When her womb was soft with sun, call her the laughing. So, and we can read in the Bible, now Abraham and Sarah were old and well stricken in age, and Sarah laughed within herself, saying, after I'm waxed old, shall I have pleasure, my Lord being old also? But so it happened, and we're going to go now to another story that has to do with Abraham, and it's the story of the binding of Isaac. After Abraham expels Hagar and Ishmael, he has only one son left with him. And we know that he is told to take the one son that is left and take him and bind him and kill him as a sacrifice, offer him as a sacrifice. Now the Bible has this mechanism of measure for measure. You expelled one son, you won't have the other either. You, Sarah, you made him expel him, you are going to be punished too. Now, many Israeli women took the story of the Akedah, the binding of Isaac, as a symbol for what we have to undergo in Israel when we send our children to the army. And that's the point I'm going to make now with the 2 points here. We all know that the Bible tells us that an angel appeared and told Abraham not to touch the child, and a ram was there, etc., etc. This poem, which has to do, and he said, take now thy son, thy only son whom thou lovest. But he had another son. It's not the only son, even Isaac, and get thee into the land of Moriah and offer him there for a burnt offering upon one of the mountains, which I will tell thee of. We don't know what Sarah thought. We know only that Abraham wakes up early in the morning, takes the child, and walks for 3 days. And the child keeps asking, why, where, who? And he says, we shall see. And the tension is terrible there. And who knows what Sarah feels when she wakes up in the morning and the only child is gone. Now this woman, Raya Harnik, that wrote this poem, which we are going to read in a moment, she was the mother of Goni. Goni is her son there. Goni Harnik, or Gior Harnik, died at the fortress of Beaufort, which is a fortress at the north of the country, just in the war in Lebanon. The first war was Lebanon in 1982. He was the commander of the group that really conquered the place. And Raya Harnik became one of the spokeswoman for the movement to go out of Lebanon, which happened later on. And she took the story of the binding of Isaac as a personal story. And here is what she has to say. And this is again another example of how the poets use the Bible as a stepping stone for a new thing, for something else. I will not offer my firstborn for sacrifice. Not I. At night, God and I make reckonings. Who can claim what? I know and am grateful, but not my son and not for sacrifice. I don't think we have much to say about it, only that she knows that God gave her a lot of good things, and she doesn't deny that, but not her son. She is not going to offer her son. And this becomes an outcry of many Israeli women. Not my son, not for sacrifice. Aliza Shenhar, who is the president of the University of Emek Israel, and who was ambassador to Russia, takes again the story of the Akedah, and she takes it to another place. Let's see the Bible, the biblical passage first. And Abraham built the altar there, and laid the wood in order, and bound Isaac his son, and laid him on the altar upon the wood. And Abraham stretched forth his hand, and took the knife to slay his son. And the angel of the Lord called, lay not thy hand upon the lad, neither do thou anything unto him. Now in Shenhar's poem, there is no God. There is a loudspeaker. There is no altar. There is no angel. There is just war. The loudspeaker screamed. Israelis know that the first day at the Bakum, when you get drafted, the loudspeaker screams. You get drafted, the child comes, and he gets drafted, and the loudspeaker tells the mothers, take your only one, the one you love. And the altar is destroyed. There is no godly sign, nothing. Wood of burnt offering is scattered. The youth roll balls of love on the grass of their youth. Their tongues are hot. The knife is shining in the valley, in the light of the moon of mid-border. Gadi, 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 gadi. The white angel, the one who always cries, please don't lay a hand, is on leave. Now in Hebrew it's even stronger. Huberegila. Now I can't translate it. Regila. Bina, how would you translate it? Chufsha regila. It's not just leave.
It's a
It's a
regular
regular vacation.
Yeah,
vacation from
it's
the-
a regular leave. He is always on leave.
It's like an ongoing.
Always. He is always absent. The angel who tells don't touch the child is never there. Is never there.
So is the knife shining in the body and the mid border, that's what tells you that we're in a realm of war?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, please.
What is a wadi?
It's the dry river.
What is a wadi?
Yeah. A dry riverbed.
Why is it only the son? Child.
It's true that women also go to the army, but they usually, it's not true anymore. It used to be true that they don't go to combat missions. Now they do, but in the past they did not. Okay. Now we go to another woman who is barren. The grandson of our Abraham, Jacob, who is another very honest guy. He becomes the firstborn, but he's the secondborn. So how can the secondborn become the firstborn? Because he buys from his brother the firstborn birthright, by giving him soup, lentil soup, but red lentils, remember, not green lentils. And also, he gets the blessing from the father because the mother loves him more than the other child. So the mother is going to cheat the husband, and she's going to put the skin of a goat on the hands of the younger son. And when the father, who is blind, I love this story, how everybody is cheating everybody. The blind person is there. In comes the son with the goat skin, because the other son, Esau, is very hairy. So in order for the father to bless the firstborn, we have to masquerade the secondborn as the firstborn. How about that? Shakespeare could learn something from that. Okay? So we keep masquerading him, and he goes in, and the father says, but your voice is the voice of Jacob, but your hands are the hands of Esau. And he's going to bless him. Never mind, he blesses him, and when the other son hears that, he is saying, once my father is dead, I'm going to kill my brother. He's going to kill Jacob, another murder. So, another archetypal story. So Jacob is going to run away to his uncle. The uncle is his mother's brother, and he lives in Haran, in the northern part of Israel. And there, he goes there, and he sees a beautiful girl, and this is Rachel, and he falls in love with her. But the father has another girl, and her name is Leah, and she's not beautiful. And Jacob says to Lavan, Lavan, what an irony. Lavan is white, but he is so black in character that it's beautiful that he's called Lavan. And commentators, I said I won't say that, but the only thing say it's Naval. These are the letters. Naval is a villain, and it's the same letters as Lavan. So if you mix the letters, you get Naval. Anyways, so the father says, if you work for 7 years, I'm going to give you my daughter. And he starts working and working and working. And the night that his marriage is going to be, there is a party. And he goes to the tent and does what he does. And in the morning, it's Leah. It's not Rachel. It's the other girl. And he goes to the father, to Lavan, and he says, why did you cheat me? He says, because we don't give the young one before we... You cheated. You took the birthright from your brother. You're going to be punished. Measure for measure. Remember, the Bible always has this technique. Measure for measure. Don't cheat others. You won't be cheated. Anyways, he tells him, I want the other one. He says, work 7 years more. So he's going to work 7 years more, and he's going to get Rachel. By now she's an old maid. And she wants children, and she doesn't have children. She's barren. And she goes to Jacob, and she says, give me children. In the meantime, there are beautiful stories. His son from Leah, Reuben, goes to bed with his stepmother, with whom Jacob has 2 children, so they are two of his brothers. It's so complicated. I mean, I had to draw a flow chart here in order to understand. But everybody's having sex with everybody. It's great. And Leah and Rachel are selling Jacob at night. Who is he going to be with tonight? So she's giving him some fruit that is aphrodisiac. What a story, what a story. If you want a pornographic movie, just read it before you go to bed. It's great. 50 Shades of Grey could learn from that a lot. A lot. No doubt about it. Anyways, so Rachel is barren, and you remember there is this need to have children. That's the main thing that women have to do, and that's how the human race will continue to exist. And finally, she has 2 children. One is Joseph, and the other one, we are going to get to Joseph very soon, and the other one is Benjamin, or Binyamin, and we are here at Genesis 35, and they journeyed from Bethel, and there was still some way to come to Ephrat, and Rachel travailed, and she had hard labor. And it came to pass that she dies when at labor, and she was buried in Ephrat. The same is Bethlehem. By the way, when Jacob asks his children to take him back to Israel, he wants to be buried next to Leah and not to Rachel. After 14 years of working for Rachel, he wants to be buried with Leah. That's to tell us another story. There is one woman who is on a pedestal, and there is a woman you live with. Okay, next. So the poem is called Like Rachel, Kemo Rachel. And maybe I didn't say no. Okay. Sorry. It's here. It's written by Dalia Rabikovich. It should be 1936, and the other way around. Never mind. Yeah. Who was my cousin, my first cousin, and she was the poet laureate of Israel, and she won the Israeli Award for poetry. And Dalia herself was buried until the age of 41. And the story goes like that. That's quite a story. It's more interesting than the poem itself. That though she was very leftist and anti-religious, oh my God, how anti-religious she was, she heard that if you go to the tomb of Rachel and you lie on the tomb and you ask Rachel to have children, you'll have children. So this cousin of mine goes in a bus to Bethlehem. She wears clothes of the ultra-religious people, and she lies on the tomb of Rachel, and behold, she is she has a child. She's conceiving. You know, that's just an unbelievable story. Anyways, the poem she wrote is before she had the child. To die like Rachel, with the soul quivering like a bird, seeking escape. Beyond the tent, Jacob and Joseph stood stricken. They spoke of her with awe. All her days tossed about within her like a child wanting to be born. How hard it is. Jacob's love consumed her voraciously. Now while the soul expires, she has no desire for all that. She couldn't care less about Jacob's love. All she cares about is having a child, even dying at birth, but just have a child. Suddenly the baby screamed, and Jacob came to the tent, but Rachel feels nothing. Tenderness floods her face and her head. A great peace came over her. Her breath of life will never again stir a feather. They laid her down among the mountain stones and spoke no eulogy. To die like Rachel, this is what I want, to die at birth. Yeah, please.
I'm confused. It's not clear to me. Didn't Rachel give birth? I know I'm confused. Rachel gave birth to Jacob?
No,
No, Benjamin.
Jacob was her husband.
Oh, that's it.
Joseph and Benjamin.
Were her?
She had two children,
Yes.
Joseph and Benjamin. Joseph and Benjamin. And her husband was Jacob. And she died when she gave birth.
So who were where the fetus were fighting in the womb? The twins?
Yaakov and Esau. Jacob and
They were
Esau.
fighting in the womb.
Okay. Again, what is very, very important for women in the Bible is to have the child. And this really surpasses anything else. Even the love to Jacob, even the desire to live. As long as I have a child, that's it. That's my fulfillment. Can you
But here she plays a very beautiful game with the biblical language. When Rachel in the Bible says to you, "Give me sons or I'll die," and here she wants to even to die to give
Yeah.
birth. So she's even rebelling against Antichrist. So she's like, she's going one step further.
Yeah. Okay, Gadi Hashir. Now we are going to listen to some music. And you have it, Rachel. It's called Rachel. It's on the second page, I guess. Or something. Okay. The song that we just heard in that song, the one who wrote the lyrics and the song, is really telling Rachel the fate of her son Benjamin. I'm not going to go into that fate because he's one of the tribes and they were almost wiped out because they were so atrocious. I'm not going to tell you that story because you won't sleep at night. Anyways, we are going now to another sexual story. And another story that has to do with the wish of the woman to have a child. One of the sons of Jacob is Judah. He has 3 sons. Onan, and Shelah. They go and goes and has a wife. Her name is Tamar. Now he dies. Her dies. So in order to Jewish law, the other son must either marry the woman or set her free or liberate her. The ritual is terrible because he has to take off his shoe and spit in her face. I won't go into that. That's another horror story. We are full of them. Anyways, so Er dies, and she is now marrying Shelah. Shelah didn't want to have sex with her, so he masturbated. That's another story that you have to know. You know, I told you, sex is something very common in the Bible, and God punished him for that because he didn't plant the seed in the woman. He's killed, yeah, and he died. So now the father is afraid to give the little one because she's going to kill him too. So he doesn't give her Shelah, and in the meantime, he really imprisons her at home. She can't go with other men. She can't marry anybody else, and he won't give her Shelah. So what does she do? Another masquerade. She decides she is going to have a child. She must have a child. Who is she going to have it with? With the father of her husbands, with Yehuda. In the meantime, his wife, Shua, she dies. The wife of Yehuda. And she knows, Tamar knows, that Yehuda goes with his flock on a certain way, and on that way there is a place where all the harlots stand. So she dresses like a harlot, and she puts a veil so he can't recognize her. And when he comes by, she seduces him and she has sex with him. And she says to him, I want 3 things from you. I want 1 goat, and I want your cord and your staff. In the meantime, she conceives and she has this huge belly. And people come to Yehuda, to Judah, and they tell him, your daughter-in-law had intercourse, and she's a harlot, and you must kill her, because that was the law. So as he says, Hotziua, take her out, and we are going to stone her to death. And as they take her out, she says, could you recognize the stuff in the cord? And he sees they are his. So he understands who she had sex with. And of course they don't kill her. And she has 2 children from him. But he didn't have any more intercourse with her. And that's okay. Because she just has to bear children. That's the decree. That's the destiny. So that's another.
How did she get 2 kids if there's no more sex?
Twins. She had twins. A lot of twins in the Bible. I don't know why. That's a very interesting point.
In order to have conflict.
Right, and to kill one another. Yeah. Okay. You see, like Judah said to Tamar, his daughter-in-law, remain in a widow in thy father's house. You wait there, you don't go out. Okay, got it? Another one? So Aryeh Sivan, who also won the Israeli Award for Literature, wrote a poem about the need. It's a man, remember. The eternal need of a woman for sex. And that's the blood of her life. From Adulam, maybe someone would like to read it? No. Okay, I'll read it. From Adulam unto Arad, the wind would shake her opening with a hard hand. She is standing on opening of eyes. He's playing with the words in the Bible. And she, after all the death, a woman. Her organs in place, no, not less than her or not. Er simply died. That's the first husband. Onan would flicker and die out, like a wet candle in its fat. But when she went down to bathe, she saw, almost in fright, that her organs were branches from which the sea of death had departed. She becomes like the sea of death. She's dead. Unless she has a man to water her, she is going to die. They had a vitality hard and distressing for a woman left without a man for her flesh, until Judah came. On the crossroads, until Judah came, with the stuff and cords, with the soft lamb hair that extended beyond the season, as in the year in which the rain revisited the desert of Arad. Judah is the rain. Judah is life. Without a man, she is going to die. Of course, only a man can write something like that. Now we have a lovely poem. Potiphar's wife. Now the woman writes that. And you can see the difference in style and point of view when a man writes or a woman writes. Now the story of Potiphar has to do with Joseph, the firstborn of Rachel. Now I don't know if you remember the story. Anyways, the brothers, he has 11 more brothers who can't stand him because he's a dreamer and he's very, very arrogant, and he tells them that he dreamt at night that his father and mother and his brothers are going to come and bow to him, and he is the king, etc., etc. So they decide one day to kill him. But the big brother decides that they had better sell him to somebody than kill him. And they put him in a well, in a dry well. And when the merchants come, they sell him and they get money, and they go back to their father and they tell him that he was devoured by an animal. God knows what kind of animal. Anyways, and Jacob sits Shiva on him and cries, and he's sure that he's dead. Anyways, he is sold to the Egyptians, and there he becomes the head of the how would I say that? No, not yet. He'll become later. He becomes the head of the household of Potiphar.
Steward.
He's more than that. He's much more than that. He's in charge of all the household. And there is a young wife there who falls in love with him, because the Bible tells us that he was so handsome that women would walk on the wall just to see him, but not sa'adu alei shur. They just wanted to see him. He was so handsome. Anyways, the Bible tells us the story that Potiphar's wife, she couldn't care less about her husband. She wants to sleep with him. And he was a tzaddik. He was a righteous person, so he would not. And as she was trying to seduce him, he ran away, and his coat was left in her hands, and she yelled, and they put him in prison. Now, Judith Kafri says, come on, stop that nonsense. Who are you telling all that nonsense? Probably they had sex many times before, and now he just didn't like her anymore. That's what the poem that we are going to read. He didn't like her anymore. He wanted to get rid of her, and he is going to be in prison and then become the vizier, the big vizier there, like a pharaoh, second in command, and she, God knows what happened to her. So that's another story, and that's a very feminine look at the story. Okay. The question is, what really happened between Joseph and Potiphar's wife? What flowed between them secretly unseen? Flowed, of course, sex. Perhaps he dug her a blue water canal in the desert. What do you think they did together? Did he dig her a canal in the desert.
He didn't spill any.
Right. No, he wasn't on none. Perhaps he said to her things that are whispered privately in the dark, or his eyes said it. A woman doesn't just ask a man to come and lie with her. Something happened between them, but the Bible doesn't tell. Joseph did get thrown in the pit, but he managed. He always would achieve the highest status. Men always do. At least victory. This dreamer of dreams was more practical than all the politicians and sold the whole nation as slaves to Pharaoh in Egypt. The fields, the cattle. He amassed Anna and property, and Osnath, daughter of Potiphar. He had another wife later on. He was a righteous and honest man, taken from Shakespeare. But Brutus is, he was my friend. But Brutus is an honorable man. Right. That's what he was apparently. But what happened meanwhile to Potiphar's wife, whose name isn't even mentioned, when she was left alone with his garment in his hands, his treachery in her hands. I can't even begin to tell what happened to her, even though I know. Got it?
I couldn't find the...
Okay. Potiphar's wife and Joseph. He's in the pit. Now this is taken from Joseph and the Multicolored Coat that was produced here and was translated into Hebrew and done by Habima. Habima is our national theater by Tzadi Tzofati. So here we are almost finished with the book of Genesis. We are in Egypt, and now we are going to go back to Israel. We are going to leave the Israelites walking for 40 years in the desert with Moses. They are there. They are finished. They have finished their walk, and they are back in Canaan, in the land of Israel. And they are going to have fights all the time, wars with their neighbors. So what else is new in this world? There is this guy, Yavin, in English, Javin, who is in the north, and he's going to send his chief of staff, Sisera, or you call him Sisera, to fight the Israelites. But the Israelites are going to win the war. And again, the sex is going to happen here, because Sisera is going to run away to the tent of Jael, wife of Hever, because Hever was like a no man's land. They didn't have the war with Yavin. And he's going to tell her that he wants some water. And instead of water, she gives him milk. And as he is between her legs, that's what it says, the Bible. Ben raglea kara nafal, probably oral sex. She takes a peg and she hammers it into his head and he dies. Beautiful story, isn't it? I told you, stories just before bedtime. God is saying it's still Torrentino. What I'm telling he said is Torrentino. Anyways, so we are going now to another phase completely. We are back in Israel. The slaves from Egypt already came back. And they have a land of their own and a kingdom of their own. It's not kingdom, it's the judges, but let's put it like a kingdom. The days of the judges. And we have another poem. And the poem this time is by Chaim Guri. And it has to do with the mother of the enemy. And here is compassion and empathy, understanding the other. The Bible, as I told you, takes us to all kinds of places. And here, the poet really feels for the mother of the enemy. Because in the Song of Deborah, who was the prophet woman in those days, she mocks the enemy. And Chaim Guri can't stand it. So he takes another look at the enemy. They also have a mother. They also suffer. And here we are going to see the mother of Sisera. Long ago, at the end of Deborah's song, I heard the silence of Sisera's chariots that were left. I looked at Sisera's mother, gazing through the window there, a woman with a streak of silver in her hair. Maidens sew a spoil of, I don't know how to, varicolored embroidery.
Spool.
Please read it, Jim. Of varicolored embroidered cloth on the captive's neck. He lay as if asleep in the tent then. His hands were very empty. Traces of milk, butter and blood on his chin. The silence lay unbroken by horse or chariot. The maidens kept silent one by one. My silence touched their own. After a while, the sun went down. The setting rays went out. For 40 years the land was stilled. 40 years horses didn't race. Dead riders didn't pierce with glassy eyes. But she died shortly after her son was killed. This is very, how would I put it? It's a very unique poem in which the poet understands what the mother of the other might be feeling. And he really paved the way to many other poems in this vein, in this streak. My silence touched their own. He understands her silence. I told you that the Bible is very concise. He only says she was silent. And here he really feels, understands what she was silent about and how she died because her son died. They also have a mother. Even though they are Palestinians, even though they are Arab, they have mothers. And we also understand that they are suffering, not only us. Okay. The judges are gone. By now we have a kingdom. We have a king, a very honest guy. Again, very honest. Extremely honest. He only sends the husband of the one he wants. He sends Bathsheba's husband to the war so he would be killed. And he tells his chief commander to put him in the first row so he would surely be killed. He cheats his father-in-law Saul. His father-in-law wants to kill him. Oh, beautiful stories. And he marries the daughter of his father-in-law, of Saul, of course. He marries Michal. The only place in the Bible where it says that a woman loved a man is about Michal. Michal, daughter of Saul, the Bible tells us that she loved him. She was madly in love with him, and she betrayed her father because her father told her that if she wants to marry David, then David has to go and bring 104 skins from the Philistines. So that means if he fights them, he'll die. And he brought 200, by the way. But he fought the Philistines and he brought the 104 skins. And then Saul wasn't happy with that, so he sent people to kill him. Michal heard it, so she puts some rope from the window, and she makes him leave the house, and she puts something in the bed that looks as if somebody is sleeping there. And when the people come to kill him, they find only the blankets and God knows what not. And then David is going to bring back the ark to Jerusalem because it was taken in the war. And as he brings it back to Jerusalem, he's going to leap and dance, and she really has a lot of contempt for him. The Bible tells us that from that big love, it became a lot of mockery and contempt and disdain.
No, but the reason is
תסלחי לי,
there was
תסלחי לי, אני באמצע משפט. Anyways, the Bible tells us that he never had sex with her after that, and that she never had a child. In another chapter, we know that the Bible tells us that she had 5 children whom he killed later on. Now, the commentators say it's not her, she didn't have a child, her sister had children, not she. Anyways, the story is quite complex, and again, the cruelty and the need for children and the tension in the family. We are going to hear now a short song about Michal, daughter of Saul, and which says that he didn't bring her dowry, regular dowry, only the 100 foreskins. Here we can see that she lets him out of the window so her father won't kill him. And this is a poem that I wrote. Odhu, while he's still, she sees him dancing. And she sees him dancing as a simple person, not as a king, leaping and dancing before the ark. And what happens then? While he still danced before the ark, leaped with a victory shout, his wife shot her contempt at his body. And she despised him in her heart. He therefore didn't know her. And since then, her body would dance before his body, leap before his potency, but he to her body would not come. And Michal, daughter of Saul, never had a son until her dying day. What happens here is, I wanted to understand why it says that she didn't have a son. And the only reason I could see is because she was so contemptful of him that he wouldn't touch her anymore. So this is really several poems that we looked at today that have all to do with women figures in the Bible. And we started with Eve, who knew what sexuality is, and ended with Michal, who didn't have sexuality after she despised her husband. And most of the poems and the poets have to do with this notion of sexuality and women. Curiosity in women, jealousy in women, compassion in women, and also the need, the deep need for a child that really makes them tick. This is what makes them tick. And they are willing even to die as long as they are going to die.